On the night of our 30th wedding anniversary, my husband looked into my eyes and said, "I'm tired, darling. Let's just sleep separately tonight." We didn't share a bed. We didn't share anything. And at midnight, when the house should have been silent, I heard sounds low, rhythmic moans drifting through the darkness from the maid's room. My heart pounding, my hands trembling, I walked down that hallway and opened the door. What I saw in that room didn't just break my heart. It shattered 30 years of my life into 1,000 pieces. But before I tell you what happened next, I want to pause here. I'm so grateful you're here with me. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever felt betrayed, discarded, or underestimated, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. And in the comments, tell me where you're watching from. I want to know how far the story of revenge and rebirth has traveled. Your support means everything to me. Now, let me take you back to the beginning of the worst night of my life. My name is Edna Gordon, and I'm 53 years old. 53 years of living, 30 years of marriage, and in one single night, I discovered that none of it had been what I thought. The evening started beautifully. Our home, a sprawling colonial with ivory columns and floor-to-ceiling windows, glowed with warm light. The dining room table was set with our finest china, the kind we only used for special occasions. Crystal glasses caught the candlelight. The scent of roasted lamb and rosemary filled the air. Our children had come. Michael, our eldest, with his wife, Sarah, radiant and laughing, and even little Emma, our granddaughter, who'd made us a card with glitter and crooked hearts. To 30 years, Damson had said, raising his glass. His smile was wide, his voice booming with that charm that had won me over 3 decades ago. To my beautiful wife, Edna, the woman who gave me everything. I'd smiled back, my heart full. I wore my emerald satin gown, the one that hugged my curves just right, the one Damson used to say made my eyes look like jewels. I'd curled my hair, applied my lipstick carefully. I wanted to feel beautiful for him. I wanted tonight to be special. After dinner, after the children left with promises to visit soon, after the house grew quiet, I found Damson in our bedroom. He was already in his pajamas, sitting on the edge of the bed, rubbing his temples. "Damson," I said softly, stepping into the room. "Are you all right?" He glanced up at me, and for just a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Was it guilt? Annoyance? I couldn't tell. "I'm exhausted, Edna," he said, his voice flat. "It's been a long day. I think I'll sleep in the guest room tonight." The words hit me like cold water. The guest room? But it's our anniversary. I know. He waved his hand dismissively, already standing, already moving toward the door. "We'll celebrate properly tomorrow. I just need rest." And then he was gone. I stood there in my emerald gown, alone in our bedroom, feeling foolish, feeling invisible. I told myself it was fine. He was tired. We weren't young anymore. Tomorrow would be different, but sleep wouldn't come. I lay in our king-sized bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the emptiness beside me like a physical wound. The clock ticked. Midnight came and went. And then, cutting through the silence, I heard it. A sound. Low. Rhythmic. Unmistakable. Moaning. At first, I thought I was imagining it. But no, there it was again. Louder now, accompanied by the creak of a bed frame, the breathless gasps of pleasure. My heart began to pound. My hands went cold. The sound was coming from the east wing, from Tamika's room. Tamika, our maid, 28 years old, with smooth dark skin and bright, innocent eyes. The girl I'd hired 6 months ago because she'd reminded me of my own daughter, hardworking, respectful, grateful. I rose from the bed like a ghost, my emerald gown whispering against the floor. My bare feet moved silently across the marble hallway. The moans grew louder with every step. My breath came in shallow gasps. My mind raced with explanations, excuses, anything but the truth I already knew. I reached her door. My hand touched the brass handle, and I pushed it open. The scene before me unfolded in slow motion, every detail searing itself into my memory like a brand. The dim lamplight, the tangled sheets, And there, on that narrow maid's bed, was my husband, my Damson, moving with a desperate, animalistic passion I hadn't seen in years. Beneath him, Tamika writhed and moaned, her hands clawing at his back, her face twisted in ecstasy. They didn't even notice me. I stood there, frozen, my emerald gown a mockery now, a costume for a fool. The sounds continued, louder, faster, obscene. And something inside me, something I'd built over 30 years of devotion and sacrifice and silent endurance, cracked wide open. This was the moment my life fractured. This was the moment Edna Gordon, the devoted wife, began to die. But you haven't heard the worst part yet. I stood there in that doorway, unable to move, unable to breathe, unable to process what my eyes were seeing. The sounds continued, those terrible, primal sounds, but they seemed distant now, as if I were underwater, drowning in my own disbelief. My legs wouldn't hold me anymore. I stumbled backward into the hallway, my hand pressed against the wall for support. The emerald satin of my gown felt heavy now, suffocating. My vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall. And then, standing there in that dark corridor while my husband made love to another woman just feet away, my mind began to drift. Not forward. Not to what I should do next, but backward, 30 years backward, through every sacrifice I'd made, every dream I'd buried, every piece of myself I'd given away. I was 23 years old when I met Damson Gordon. 23, with a degree in architecture from Howard University and a job offer from one of DC's most prestigious firms. I had dreams then, big, beautiful dreams. I wanted to design buildings that would outlive me, structures that would stand as monuments to creativity and vision. Damson was 28, charming and ambitious, working his way up in commercial real estate. He had this way of looking at me, like I was the only woman in the world, like I was extraordinary. "Marry me, Edna," he'd said after only 8 months of dating. "Build a life with me instead. We'll build an empire together." I said yes because I loved him, because I believed him. Because at 23, I thought love was enough. Within a year, I was pregnant with Michael. The architecture firm couldn't hold my position. "It's just temporary," I told myself. "I'll go back after the baby." But then Sarah came. And then the demands of Damson's career grew. He needed me at home, he said. He needed me to host dinners for his clients, to organize his schedule, to be the perfect wife who made everything run smoothly, so he could focus on building his success. "You're so good at this, Edna," he'd tell me, kissing my forehead. "You're the backbone of everything I do. I couldn't do any of this without you." So I stayed home. I raised our children. I managed our household with the precision of a military operation. I smiled at business dinners and made small talk with wives who had their own careers, their own identities, while I disappeared further into the role of Mrs. Gordon. My drafting table gathered dust in the attic. My degree hung in a frame in the basement. My dreams became ghosts. And I told myself it was worth it because I loved him, because our family was happy, because this was what marriage meant, sacrifice and compromise and putting others first. The memories came faster now, sharper, more painful. I remembered the nights Damson came home late, smelling of expensive perfume that wasn't mine. "Client dinner," he'd say with a tired smile, and I believed him because I needed to believe him. I remembered the way he'd stopped really seeing me somewhere around year 15. How his eyes would glaze over when I talked about my day. How his touch became perfunctory, obligatory, something checked off a list. I remembered gaining weight after Sarah was born, and the way Damson's compliments dried up. How he'd glance at other women, younger women, thinner women, with an interest he no longer showed me. I remembered shrinking myself to make him comfortable, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, agreeing with opinions I didn't share, becoming smaller and quieter and more invisible with each passing year. I remembered standing at the mirror on my 50th birthday, looking at the stranger staring back at me, and wondering when exactly I'd disappeared. But I'd stayed silent. I'd stayed devoted. Because that's what I'd promised 30 years ago. For better or worse. In sickness and health. I'd given him my youth, my career, My body changed from bearing his children. My dreams. My identity. Everything I had, I'd laid at his feet like an offering. And tonight, our anniversary, while I dressed in emerald satin and hoped for tenderness, he'd been planning this. Planning to spend the night with our maid. With a girl young enough to be our daughter. The sounds from Tamika's room grew louder, more frantic. I could hear Damson's voice now, breathless and urgent, saying things to her he'd once said to me. Words that had meant something before he'd repeated them to someone else. My hand clutched at my chest. The pain there was physical, like something vital was tearing. My breathing came in short, shallow gasps. The hallway spun. 30 years of devotion. 30 years of loving him completely, faithfully, unconditionally. And this was my reward. I slid down the wall, my emerald gown pooling around me on the cold marble floor. The tears came now, hot and silent, streaming down my face. My whole body shook with the effort of staying quiet, of not screaming, of not running into that room and tearing them apart. But I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I could only sit there in the darkness, mourning the death of everything I'd believed in. Mourning the marriage I thought we had. Mourning the woman I used to be before I gave her away piece by piece. How had I not seen this coming? The late nights. The distance. The way he'd stopped touching me with any real desire. The way he looked through me instead of at me. How long had this been happening? How many others had there been? And the worst question of all, the one that cut deepest. Had he ever really loved me? Or had I just been convenient? A good wife, a good mother, a good manager of his life while he took everything I offered and gave me nothing real in return? I thought about my mother's words when I told her I was giving up architecture to marry Damson. Make sure you keep something for yourself, Edna, she'd said, her eyes sad and knowing. Don't disappear into someone else's life. But I had disappeared. Completely. Totally. And now, sitting on this cold floor while my husband betrayed me with another woman, I finally understood the price I'd paid. But here's what Damson didn't know. The woman he dismissed, the wife he'd betrayed, the fool he thought he'd married, she was about to become his worst nightmare. I don't know how long I sat there on that cold marble floor. Minutes. Hours. Time had lost all meaning. But somewhere in the darkness, somewhere in the depth of my grief, something else began to rise. Not tears anymore. Something harder. Something colder. Something that burned. I stood slowly, my legs steadier now. I smoothed down my emerald gown with deliberate care. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. And I took one long, deep breath, the kind you take before diving into deep water. Then I walked back to that door. This time, I didn't hesitate. I didn't knock. I simply pushed it open wide and stepped inside. The moans stopped instantly. Time seemed to freeze. Damson's head whipped around, his eyes going wide with shock. Tamika gasped, scrambling to pull the sheets up over her naked body, her face draining of all color. For a moment, we all just stared at each other in that small, dimly lit room. The lamp on the nightstand cast long shadows across the tangled bed. The air smelled of sweat and sex and betrayal. Edna, Damson started, his voice cracking. Don't speak yet, I said quietly. My voice surprised even me, calm, steady, sharp as glass. Not yet, Damson. He froze, half covered by the sheet, his body still pressed against Tamika's. His mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. I stepped further into the room, my heels clicking softly against the hardwood floor. I looked at them both, really looked at them. Damson, with his graying hair disheveled, his face flushed with exertion and now panic. Tamika, tears already streaming down her young face, her hands clutching the sheets like they could protect her. Mrs. Gordon, I'm so, Tamika began, her voice breaking. I said don't speak. My tone was ice. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. I moved to the foot of the bed, my arms crossed over my chest. The emerald satin caught the lamplight, and for a moment, I was glad I'd worn it. Glad I looked beautiful while confronting them. Glad they could see exactly what they'd thrown away. 30 years. I said, my eyes fixed on Damson. We celebrated 30 years tonight. Our children were here. Our granddaughter made us a card. You toasted me at dinner. You called me the woman who gave you everything. Edna, please let me explain. Damson scrambled off the bed, grabbing for his pants. Explain what exactly? I cut him off, my voice rising just slightly. Explain how you were too tired to spend our anniversary with me? Explain how you told me you needed rest? Explain how 30 minutes later, you were in our maid's bed? It's not what. It just happened, we didn't mean, he was stuttering now, pulling his pants on with shaking hands. Don't insult me further with lies. Each word was a knife. This didn't just happen. You made choices tonight. Deliberate choices. You chose to dismiss me. You chose to come here. You chose her. Tamika sobbed openly now. Mrs. Gordon, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. He said, he told me. He told you what? I turned my cold gaze to her. That his wife didn't understand him? That we were practically separated? That I was cold? Which lie did he sell you, Tamika? She couldn't answer. She just cried harder. I looked back at Damson. He'd managed to put his shirt on, but it was inside out. His hands trembled as he tried to button it. The great Damson Gordon, powerful real estate developer, reduced to a pathetic, half-dressed cheater in a maid's room. I gave you everything, I said, my voice dropping to something almost tender, almost sad. My career, my youth, my body, my dreams. I made you my entire world. I raised your children. I built your home. I stood beside you at every event, every dinner, every triumph. I believed in you when no one else did. I know, he started. I'm not finished. The steel returned to my voice. I loved you, Damson. Completely. Faithfully. For 30 years, I never looked at another man. I never complained. I never asked for more than you were willing to give. I made myself smaller, so you could feel bigger. I disappeared, so you could shine. Tears streamed down his face now. Good. Let him cry. And tonight, on our anniversary, while I waited for you in our bed wearing this dress, I gestured to the emerald satin. You were here, with her, in my house, under my roof. You didn't even have the decency to take her to a hotel. Edna, please, we can fix this, I'll end it. It was just a mistake. You're absolutely right. I smiled then, cold and sharp. It was a mistake. The biggest mistake of your life. Damson's face went pale. Even Tamika stopped crying for a moment. I stepped closer to him, close enough that I could see every line on his guilty face, every bead of sweat on his forehead. This marriage is over, I said softly. Clearly. Final as a gravestone. What? No. No, Edna. I'm filing for divorce. Tomorrow morning. First thing. You can't. We can work through this 30 years. You're right about one thing. My voice was almost a whisper now. 30 years is a long time. Long enough for me to know exactly how much I'm entitled to in this divorce. Long enough for me to remember every business deal, every property, every account you thought I wasn't paying attention to. His face went from pale to gray. Long enough, I continued, for me to have copies of everything. Long enough for our children to be adults who can hear the truth. Long enough for your business partners to care about scandal. Edna, don't do this. I already have. I turned toward the door, my head held high. Pack your things. Tonight. I want you out of my house by sunrise. Your house? He sputtered. This is my house, I repeated, looking back over my shoulder. My name is on that deed too. Remember? Community property state. I suggest you start remembering a lot of things, Damson. I walked to the doorway, then paused. One final truth needed to be spoken. You know what the saddest part is? If you'd just been honest. If you just told me you didn't love me anymore, I would have been hurt. I would have cried. But I would have let you go with dignity. Instead, you chose humiliation. You chose cruelty. I looked at Tamika, still clutching those sheets, still crying. You can keep him, I said. He's all yours now. I hope he treats you better than he treated me. But we both know he won't. Then I walked out of that room. My head high, my spine straight, my emerald gown flowing behind me like a victory banner. Behind me, Damson called my name, begged, pleaded. I didn't look back. The old Edna would have forgiven him. The old Edna would have tried to save the marriage. But the old Edna died in that hallway tonight. And the woman walking away? She was just getting started. I walked straight to my study and locked the door behind me. Sleep was impossible. My mind was too sharp, too focused, too alive with purpose. The grief from earlier had crystallized into something else entirely, something clear and hard and unbreakable. I sat at my mahogany desk, the same desk where I'd managed our household finances for 30 years, where I'd organized charity galas and planned family events and kept every receipt, every document, every piece of paper that passed through our lives. Damson had always thought I was just playing house. He had no idea I'd been building an archive. I pulled out my leather-bound planner and opened to a fresh page. Then I began to write. Not emotions, not tears. Lists. Strategic, methodical lists. Assets to secure. Attorneys to contact. People who need to hear the truth before the lies begin. My hand moved steadily across the page, filling line after line with cold, calculated facts. Joint bank accounts. Investment portfolios. Properties in both our names. The beach house in Martha's Vineyard. The condo in Miami. His business accounts that I technically had access to. I knew every number, every password, every account, because for 30 years, while Damson was out building his empire, I was the one actually managing it behind the scenes. He was about to learn exactly how much power I'd quietly accumulated. Around 4 a.m, I heard movement in the hallway. Footsteps. The sound of luggage wheels on marble. The front door opening and closing. His car starting in the driveway. Damson was leaving. Good. One less thing to deal with. I didn't even look up from my lists. At 6 o'clock, as the first light of dawn crept through my study windows, I picked up my phone. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. I called Michael first. Mom, it's 6 a.m. Is everything okay? His voice was groggy, confused. No, baby. My voice was calm. Everything is not okay. I need you to sit down. I need you to wake up Sarah and call her too. Put me on speaker. What happened? Is Dad? Your father is fine, physically. But I need to tell you both something before you hear it from anyone else. There was rustling, muffled conversation. Then Sarah's sleepy voice joined the call. Mom, what's going on? I took one deep breath and told them the truth. Every detail. The anniversary dinner. His exhaustion. The sounds from Tamika's room. What I found. What I said. His departure. The line went silent for a long moment. Then Michael's voice came through, tight with fury. That son of a... Michael, no. I cut him off. I need you both to listen. I'm handling this. I'm filing for divorce today. I'm taking control of our assets. I'm going to be fine. Better than fine. Mom, we're coming over, Sarah said, her voice breaking. Not yet. I was firm. I need you both to stay calm. Go to work. Act normal. Don't call your father. Don't confront him. Let me handle this my way. But Mom, I need you to trust me. My voice softened slightly. I've spent 30 years taking care of everyone else. Now I'm taking care of myself. And I'm very, very good at taking care of things. Another pause. Then Michael spoke, his voice steadier now. What do you need from us? Just your support, your presence, and your silence for now. Can you do that? Yes, ma'am. They said it in unison the way they had as children. I love you both. I'll call you later today. I hung up before they could argue. At 8 o'clock sharp, I called Patricia Chun. She was the most ruthless divorce attorney in the state, a woman I'd met at countless charity functions, whose sharp intelligence I'd always admired. Patricia, good morning. This is Edna Gordon. Edna, darling. How lovely to hear from you. Her voice was warm, professional. I need to hire you. Today, if possible. My husband and I are divorcing. There was a slight pause. Patricia was too professional to sound surprised, but I heard the shift in her tone. I see. Would you like to come to my office? Say, 10 o'clock. Perfect. Thank you, Patricia. Edna? Just one thing before you go. Yes. Are you alright? There was genuine concern there. I will be. And I meant it. Next, I logged into our joint bank accounts. I didn't empty them. That would be foolish and illegal. But I transferred exactly half of every account into a new personal account I opened in my name only. 50%. Fair and legally defensible. I made copies of every financial document in Damson's home office. Investment statements, business contracts, tax returns, property deeds. Everything. My printer hummed for an hour straight. I called our accountant, our financial advisor, the property manager for our rental properties. One by one, I informed them of the separation and ensured my name was on every communication going forward. I was methodical. I was thorough. I was calm. Because this wasn't about revenge. Not yet anyway. This was about survival. About protection. About ensuring that when the dust settled, I would still be standing. By 9 o'clock, I'd showered and dressed in a crisp navy suit. I applied my makeup carefully, nothing too dramatic, just polished and professional. I pulled my hair into a sleek bun. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked strong. She looked dangerous. She looked like someone you didn't want to cross. I liked her. As I gathered my documents into a leather briefcase, my phone buzzed. A text from Damson. Edna, please. Can we talk? I made a terrible mistake. I love you. I stared at those words for a long moment. Then I deleted the message without responding. Words were cheap. He'd said he loved me for 30 years while slowly draining me dry. Actions were what mattered now. And my actions were going to cost him everything. I walked out of my study, out of my house, and climbed into my car. The morning sun was bright and clear. A new day. A new life. Damson thought last night was the end. He thought his apologies and tears would fix this. But what he didn't understand was that the real destruction hadn't even started yet. Patricia Chen's office was everything I expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, minimalist furniture, and walls lined with legal victories. She sat across from me in a charcoal suit, her expression sharp and attentive as I laid out 30 years of marriage in neat, documented piles. You've been thorough, she said, flipping through bank statements, property deeds, business contracts. Her perfectly manicured finger traced a line of numbers. Impressively thorough. I kept everything. My voice was steady. Every receipt, every document, every email. I managed our entire household for 3 decades. I know where every dollar went. Patricia looked up at me, something like respect flickering in her eyes. Most women in your position come to me with emotions and memories. You came with evidence and strategy. We're going to destroy him, Edna. Not destroy him. I corrected her gently. Just take what's rightfully mine. And make sure everyone knows why. She smiled then, sharp as a blade. Even better. The legal papers were filed by noon that same day. Damson was served at his office, in front of his assistant, his business partner, and 2 potential clients. Patricia had timed it perfectly. His calls started immediately. 12 missed calls by 2 o'clock. 15 by 3. I didn't answer a single one. But I made plenty of calls myself. The first was to Margaret Pemberton, the social queen of our circle. She organized every significant charity gala, every elite fundraiser, every event that mattered in our community. She was also the biggest gossip in 3 counties, a fact I was counting on. Margaret, darling, I said warmly when she answered. Do you have a moment? I need to share something with you. Just between us, of course. Of course, Edna. What's going on? I told her. Not dramatically. Not with tears. Just the facts, delivered with the perfect blend of dignified hurt and quiet strength. The anniversary. The betrayal. The maid. The divorce. Oh my God. Margaret gasped. Edna, I had no idea. That absolute bastard. After everything you've done for him. I know you'll be discreet, I said, knowing full well she'd tell everyone by sunset. I just wanted you to hear it from me before the rumors started. Of course, sweetheart. Of course. And listen if you need anything. Anything at all. By evening, my phone was flooded with messages. Women from our social circle, all expressing shock, offering support, condemning Damson. The Whisper Network had done its job. The next morning, I met with Richard Thornton, Damson's primary business partner in their commercial real estate firm. We'd known each other for years. I'd hosted dinners for him and his wife countless times. Edna, I'm so sorry about all this, Richard said as we sat in a quiet corner of an upscale cafe. His discomfort was palpable. I genuinely had no idea. I know you didn't. I stirred my coffee slowly. But Richard, I need to ask you something important. Did Damson use any joint assets for business expenses? Any of our personal accounts? His face changed. Just slightly. But enough. There were a few instances, he admitted carefully. Transfers from personal accounts to cover short-term cash flow issues. He always paid them back. Do you have records of those transactions? Yes. Of course. I'd like copies, please. My smile was pleasant, but my eyes were steel. For the divorce proceedings, I need to account for every dollar. Richard shifted uncomfortably. Edna, I don't want to get involved in. You're already involved, I said softly. Those were my assets too. 50% mine. If Damson was using them without my knowledge or consent, that's a problem. For both of you. The implication hung in the air. Richard understood immediately. If Damson had been playing fast and loose with joint funds, Richard's firm could be implicated. Their business practices questioned. Their reputation damaged. I'll have my assistant send those records over, he said quietly. And Edna? I think it might be wise if Damson and I reassessed our partnership structure. I nodded. That sounds like a very wise decision, Richard. Over the next 2 weeks, I moved through our social world like an elegant wrecking ball. I withdrew from the boards of 3 charities where Damson and I had served together. But I did it gracefully, with carefully worded letters that expressed my need to focus on personal matters during this difficult transition. Every board member understood exactly what that meant. And when they asked if Damson would continue to serve, I simply said, "You'll have to ask him. But I imagine his focus will be elsewhere." One by one, Damson's invitations dried up. The annual Pemberton Gala? Margaret personally disinvited him. The hospital fundraiser? "We think it's best if you sit this year out, Damson." The country club golf tournament? Perhaps some space would be appropriate. In our circles, social death was as powerful as financial ruin. And Damson was experiencing both. His business calls went unreturned. His emails got delayed responses. Partners began to distance themselves, worried about association with scandal. Richard started making decisions without consulting him. The beach house in Martha's Vineyard? The court froze at pending asset division. The Mercedes he loved? Joint property no longer accessible. The credit cards? Cancelled. Every joint account? Locked down tight. I'd left him with exactly one personal checking account and his salary. Nothing more. 2 weeks after that terrible anniversary night, I attended the Whitney Foundation luncheon alone. I wore cream silk and pearls, my head held high. When I entered, the room fell briefly silent. Then the women swarmed me. Support. Solidarity. Stories of their own betrayals, their own heartbreaks. I listened graciously, thanked them warmly, and moved through the room like royalty. Damson's secretary, who was there representing his company, approached me hesitantly. "Mrs. Gordon, I just wanted to say, we all think what he did was despicable. You deserved so much better." "Thank you, dear." I patted her hand. "I appreciate that." From across the room, I saw Caroline Winters, a business reporter for the city's major newspaper. She caught my eye and raised her glass slightly. I'd spoken with her yesterday. Off the record, of course. Just a casual conversation about the challenges facing women who sacrifice careers for family, about men who take advantage of their wives' invisible labor. She was writing a feature piece. No names mentioned, naturally. but everyone who read it would know exactly who she was talking about. That evening, my phone rang. Damson's number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. What, Damson? Edna, please. His voice was desperate, ragged. You're destroying me. My business is falling apart.
No one will talk to me.
I can't access our money. I can't. You destroyed yourself, I said calmly. I'm simply making sure everyone knows about it. This is cruel. This isn't like you. I laughed then. A cold, bitter sound. You're right. The old Edna would have suffered in silence. Would have protected your reputation even while you humiliated her. But you killed that woman, Damson. What you're dealing with now. This is the woman you created. I hung up before he could respond. And I was just getting started. Because Damson's financial and social ruin was only the beginning. The real karma? That was coming from somewhere he'd never expect. 6 weeks after that anniversary night, I was sipping morning coffee in my sunroom when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Mrs. Gordon? The voice was small, broken, familiar. It's Tamika. Please don't hang up. I said nothing, just waited. I know I have no right to call you, she continued, her words tumbling out through obvious tears. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I need to tell you something. I need you to know you were right. About everything. I took a slow sip of my coffee. Go on. The story came out in fragments, between sobs and shaky breaths. After I'd thrown Damson out, he'd moved Tamika into a small apartment across town. Nothing like our home, just a cramped 2-bedroom in a mediocre complex. He'd promised her it was temporary, that once the divorce settled, they'd have everything. He said you were taking everything out of spite, Tamika said. He said you were being vindictive, that you'd come around eventually. He made it sound like you were the villain. Of course he did. My voice was neutral, but reality had set in quickly. Without access to our joint accounts, without his business flourishing, without his social connections opening doors, Damson was just an aging man with a damaged reputation and dwindling resources. The charm that had once seemed so irresistible, it curdled into bitterness. He changed, Tamika whispered. At first, he was attentive.
Sweet.
He made me feel special. But then the bills started coming. The lawyer's fees. The frozen accounts. And he started blaming me. Blaming you for what? For everything. Her voice cracked. For the affair being discovered. For you filing for divorce. For his business partners distancing themselves. He said if I'd been more discreet, if I hadn't been so loud that night, you never would have found out. I almost laughed.
Of course he did.
Men like Damson never took responsibility. There was always someone else to blame. He started staying out late again, Tamika continued. Coming home smelling like perfume. Different perfume. When I asked him about it, he said I was being paranoid. Controlling. Just like you. There it was. The pattern repeating itself. The snake shedding one skin for another, but remaining a snake underneath. Last week, I came home early for my new job, Tamika said, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. He was in our bed, with a woman from his office. A secretary. Younger than me. The irony was so perfect it almost hurt. What did you do? I stood there, just like you must have. Frozen. Unable to believe what I was seeing. And he looked at me with these cold eyes and said, What did you expect, Tamika? You're getting old. You're not exciting anymore. 28 years old, and already she was getting old to him. I'd been 53 when he'd discarded me. At least I'd gotten 30 years. She'd gotten barely 2 months. I threw him out, Tamika said. Told him to leave. And you know what he said?
He laughed.
He said the apartment was in his name, that I had no legal right to anything, that I was just as disposable as I was. I finished for her. Yes. She was crying harder now. Mrs. Gordon, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I destroyed your marriage. I destroyed your family. And for what? For a man who threw me away the second I wasn't convenient anymore. I sat there in my sunroom, surrounded by plants I'd been nurturing, drinking coffee from my favorite mug, wearing comfortable clothes in my peaceful home. My home. My life. My freedom. Where are you now? I asked. At a friend's place. I have nothing. No savings. No job. I had to quit when he moved me into that apartment. No references because you were my last employer and I can't exactly ask you for one. No, you cannot. My voice was firm but not cruel. What you did was a betrayal. Of trust, of decency, of basic human respect. I gave you a job. I treated you well. And you repaid me by sleeping with my husband in my own home. I know. She was sobbing openly now. I know. I was stupid. I was selfish. He told me you didn't love him anymore, that your marriage was over, that. And you believed him because it was convenient to believe him. I interrupted. Because believing him meant you could have what you wanted without guilt. Silence on the other end. Because what could she say? I was right. But here's the thing, Tamika. I continued, my voice softer now. I don't hate you. I did, at first. That night. I could have torn you apart with my bare hands.
But now?
Now I just feel sorry for you. Sorry for me? You're 28 years old, and you just learned the hardest lesson of your life. That men like Damson Gordon don't change. They don't grow. They don't become better. They just find new victims. I paused. I spent 30 years learning that lesson. You learned it in 6 weeks. In a way, you got off easy. She made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. What he did to you, I said carefully, is exactly what he did to me. The lies. The blame. The replacement. The cruelty. You're not special in his betrayal, Tamika. You're just the latest in what I'm sure is a long line of women he's used and discarded. I don't know what to do, she whispered. I have nowhere to go. No money. Nothing. I thought about that for a long moment. Thought about the young woman who'd opened my door 6 months ago, earnest and hopeful, looking for honest work. Thought about how Damson had groomed her, manipulated her, used her. Yes, she'd made terrible choices. Yes, she'd hurt me. But Damson was the real villain here. He was the one who'd made vows. He was the one with responsibility. He was the one who destroyed everything. I can't help you, I said finally. I won't give you money or a reference or a place to stay. You have to live with the consequences of your choices. I understand. Her voice was hollow. But I will tell you this. You're young. You're resilient. You made a catastrophic mistake, but it doesn't have to define your entire life. Learn from this. Grow from this. Become someone better. How? She asked. How do I come back from this? The same way I did, I said. One day at a time. One choice at a time. One step forward at a time. I heard her take a shaky breath. Thank you for listening, she said quietly. I didn't deserve your time, but thank you. You're welcome. And I meant it. I hung up and sat there for a long moment, watching the morning light filter through my plants. Damson had destroyed Tamika the same way he'd tried to destroy me. But I'd been strong enough to survive it. To rebuild. To become something better. I hoped she would be too. But Damson's karma wasn't finished yet. Because while he was busy destroying his relationships, I was busy building something entirely new. Something he could never touch. Something that would prove once and for all that the best revenge isn't destruction, it's success. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I found myself standing in what used to be Damson's study. The settlement had been decisive. I'd gotten the house, the beach property, and 55% of our assets. Patricia had been brilliant, documenting every misuse of joint funds, every hidden expense, every lie. The study still smelled faintly of his cologne. Mahogany bookshelves lined the walls, filled with business journals he'd never read and awards he'd never earned without my support behind the scenes. I hired 2 assistants for the day. Box everything, I told them. Books, files, awards, photographs. All of it. We're starting fresh. As they worked, I wandered to the window. The morning sun streamed through, illuminating dust particles in the air. It felt symbolic somehow, all the old debris being cleared away to make room for light. One of the assistants called out, "Mrs. Gordon? What about this?" She was holding my old drafting table, the one I'd stored in the attic 30 years ago. They'd found it while clearing out his collections of expensive whiskeys he'd pretended to enjoy. I walked over slowly, running my fingers across the worn wood. My architecture tools were still in the drawer, pencils, rulers, compasses, all waiting patiently for 3 decades. "Set it by the window," I said softly. "Right there, where the light is best." That night, after the study had been emptied and cleaned, I sat at that drafting table for the first time in 30 years. My hands remembered the weight of the pencil, the angle of the lines, the satisfaction of creating something from nothing. I wasn't designing buildings anymore. That dream had passed. But I was designing something else, a new life, built on my own terms. I pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and began to sketch. Not architecture. A logo. Clean lines. Elegant curves. 2 words that would become my new identity. Gordon and Company. The idea had been forming for weeks. I'd spent 30 years organizing charity galas, planning corporate events, managing our household like a 5-star hotel. I'd coordinated dinners for 50 people, fundraisers with 500 guests, family celebrations that required military precision. I'd been running a luxury lifestyle operation for decades. I just hadn't been paid for it. That was about to change. I started small. I called in favors from my social network, women who'd supported me through the divorce, who'd witnessed my grace under pressure, who knew my capabilities. "Margaret," I said during our coffee meeting, "I'm starting a business. High-end event planning and lifestyle management. Corporate events, private parties, weddings, anything that requires sophistication and flawless execution." Margaret's eyes lit up. "Edna, that's perfect for you. You've been doing this for years anyway."
Exactly.
"And my first client is going to be the Whitney Foundation's annual gala. I want to make you an offer." I laid out my proposal, a complete redesign of their signature event, bringing in new sponsors, creating an experience rather than just another fundraiser. My fee was competitive, but not cheap. I wasn't underselling myself anymore. Margaret didn't hesitate. "When can you start?" The Whitney Gala became my coming-out party. I transformed their usual hotel ballroom event into an enchanted garden experience. Crystal installations that caught the light like dewdrops. Living walls of flowers. A string quartet that transitioned seamlessly into a jazz ensemble. 5-course dinner with wine pairings that told a story. But more than that, I increased their fundraising by 40%. I brought in sponsors they'd never accessed before. I created moments so Instagram-worthy that the event trended locally for 3 days. The morning after, my phone didn't stop ringing. Corporate executives wanting their annual meetings transformed. Wealthy families planning milestone celebrations. Brides who wanted weddings that felt like art installations. Everyone wanted a piece of what I'd created. Within 6 months, Gordon and Company had 5 employees. Within a year, we'd moved into a sleek office downtown, all glass and natural light, with my drafting table positioned prominently in my personal workspace. I was designing again. Not buildings, but experiences. And it felt like coming home. One afternoon, I stood in front of my team during our weekly meeting. 5 brilliant women, all different ages, all bringing unique skills. I'd hired intentionally. Women who'd been overlooked, underestimated, told they were too old or too young or too ambitious. "Ladies," I said, looking at each of them, "we have 17 events scheduled for next quarter. 2 corporate retreats, 3 weddings, and 12 private celebrations. We're booked solid through the end of the year." They applauded, their faces bright with pride. "But more importantly," I continued, "every single one of you is getting a raise. Because our success is your success. We build together. We win together." After the meeting, my lead coordinator, Diana, a 50-year-old woman who'd been forced into early retirement from her previous company, approached me privately. "Edna, I just want to thank you. When you hired me, I thought my career was over. Now I feel more vital than I did at 30. I squeezed her hand. "Diana, You were never the problem. You just needed someone who recognized your value. She nodded, her eyes wet with grateful tears. I understood exactly how she felt. 6 months later, I attended a business conference downtown. I was there to speak on a panel about entrepreneurship after 50, how to rebuild, reinvent, and reclaim your life. As I walked through the hotel lobby in my tailored emerald suit, yes, emerald, reclaimed as my color of power, heads turned. Not because I was the woman who'd been cheated on, but because I was Edna Gordon, successful businesswoman, sought-after event designer, entrepreneur. I passed the hotel bar and froze. Damson was there, alone, nursing a whiskey. He looked older, smaller somehow. His suit was wrinkled. His face was haggard.
He saw me.
Our eyes met across the lobby. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Him, with his regret and his ruins. Me, with my power and my peace. He raised his glass slightly, a pathetic attempt at acknowledgement. I nodded once, not cruel, not kind, just neutral, and kept walking.
Because he was my past.
And I was walking into my future. That night, I stood in my office after everyone had gone home. The city lights twinkled below. My drafting table sat by the window, covered with sketches for our next big event. My awards and accolades were beginning to line the shelves. Not his anymore, but mine. I poured myself a glass of wine and raised it to my reflection in the window. To Edna Gordon, I whispered, who died at 53 and was reborn at 54, who turned betrayal into business, who built an empire from ashes. I took a sip. It tasted like victory. But the universe wasn't finished rewarding me yet. Because sometimes, when you finally learn to love yourself, the universe sends someone who knows how to love you too. 2 years after launching Gordon and Company, I was invited to speak at a business leadership summit in Boston. My company had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. 22 employees, offices in 3 cities, a client list that read like a who's who of corporate America. I stood backstage in a burgundy silk dress, reviewing my notes, when a voice beside me said, "First time speaking?" I looked up. The man was tall, distinguished, with silver gray hair and warm brown eyes. He wore a navy suit that fit perfectly, and his smile was genuine, not performative. "Third time, actually," I replied. "But I still get nervous." "That's good," he said, extending his hand. "Means you care. Jonathan Price. I'm on the panel after yours. Edna Gordon." His handshake was firm, respectful. "What's your topic?" "Ethical leadership in tech startups." "Boring, I know." He grinned self-deprecatingly. "Yours is much more interesting. Rebuilding after loss." "I read your bio. Very impressive." We talked for 10 minutes before I was called to stage. As I walked away, he called out, "Good luck out there. Though I don't think you'll need it." My panel went well. I spoke about transformation, about refusing to let betrayal define you, about building something meaningful from pain. The audience responded with a standing ovation. Afterward, during the cocktail reception, Jonathan found me again. "That was remarkable," he said, handing me a glass of champagne. "The way you spoke about turning your lowest moment into your greatest strength, it was powerful. Authentic." "Thank you." I accepted the champagne. "How was your panel?" "Adequately boring, as promised." He laughed. "But I did manage to keep most people awake." We talked easily, naturally. He told me about his company, a tech firm focused on sustainable infrastructure. He'd built it from the ground up over 15 years, survived the dot-com crash, and now employed over 300 people. "And you?" I asked. "Any rebuilding after loss stories in your past?" His expression shifted, became more serious. "My wife passed away 4 years ago. Cancer. We'd been married 28 years. I'm so sorry." "Thank you." He smiled sadly. "It broke me for a while. But eventually I realized she'd want me to keep living.
To keep building.
To find joy again." We talked for 2 hours. About business, about loss, about the strange journey of starting over in your 50s. He didn't flirt. He didn't posture. He simply talked. Like I was interesting. like my thoughts mattered. When the reception ended, he asked, "Would you like to have dinner tomorrow? I'd love to hear more about your company." Purely professional interest, of course. I smiled. Of course. Purely professional. That dinner led to another. And another. Over the next 6 months, Jonathan and I built something I'd never experienced before, a relationship between equals. He admired my business acumen, asked thoughtful questions about my strategies, celebrated my wins. He never once suggested I was working too hard, or that I should slow down, or that I was neglecting anything by pursuing my ambitions. When I traveled for work, he didn't sulk or demand my attention. He simply said, "Tell me about it when you get back. I want to hear everything." When his company hit a major milestone, I was the first person he called. When I landed my biggest client yet, he took me to dinner and insisted on toasting my success. "You're brilliant, Edna," he said, his eyes full of genuine admiration. "Watching you work is like watching an artist." It was so different from Damson. Jonathan didn't need me to shrink. He celebrated my bigness. He didn't want a wife to manage his life. He wanted a partner to share his life with. Our physical relationship developed slowly, naturally. The first time he kissed me, outside my office building after a late meeting, he asked permission first. "May I kiss you?" I'd smiled. "Yes, please." It was tender, respectful, full of promise. Nothing like the desperate passion I'd witnessed between Damson and Tamika. This was better. This was real. 14 months after we met, Jonathan and I were having dinner at an upscale restaurant when I saw him.
Damson.
Sitting alone at the bar, nursing another whiskey. He looked terrible. His suit was cheap. His face was lined and tired. The golden boy charm had curdled into middle-aged bitterness. He saw me. Saw Jonathan. Saw the way Jonathan's hand rested on mine across the table, the way we laughed together, the clear intimacy between us. Damson stood, walked over. Jonathan tensed slightly, but I squeezed his hand. "Edna," Damson said, his voice rough. "Can we talk? Just 5 minutes." "Damson, this isn't."
Please.
His eyes were desperate. "I've been trying to reach you for months.
I just need to say something."
I looked at Jonathan. He nodded slightly, trusting me.
5 minutes, I said.
Outside. We stood on the sidewalk, the evening air cool against my skin. Damson looked at me with such raw longing it was almost pitiful. "Edna, I made the biggest mistake of my life. Letting you go.
I see that now.
I was a fool. I was selfish. I took you for granted. But I want another chance. I want to make this right." I studied him carefully. This broken man who'd once held all my love, all my devotion, all my dreams.
"No, Damson.
"Please, just listen." I said no. My voice was calm, firm. Not because I'm still angry. Not because I haven't forgiven you, but because I don't want you anymore. He flinched like I'd struck him. "You see that man in there?" I gestured toward the restaurant. "He sees me as an equal. He admires my strength. He celebrates my success. He doesn't need me to make him feel important because he's secure in himself. I can be that for you." "No, you cannot." I shook my head. "Because you don't know how. For 30 years, I made myself smaller to make you feel bigger. I gave up my dreams to support yours. I became invisible so you could shine.
And you let me."
You not only let me, you required it." Tears ran down his face now.
"Good.
Let him feel it. But here's the thing, Damson," I said softly. "I want to thank you." "What?" He looked confused. "Thank you for betraying me. Thank you for breaking my heart. Thank you for forcing me to rebuild my life. Because that rebuilding led me here, to a business I'm proud of, to a life I love, to a man who sees my worth." I stepped closer, my voice gentle but absolute. "You didn't destroy me, Damson. You freed me. And for that, I'm genuinely grateful." I turned to walk back inside. "Edna, wait." I looked back one last time. "Goodbye, Damson. I truly hope you find peace. But you won't find it with me." Jonathan stood as I returned to our table. Are you alright? I'm perfect. I smiled up at him, meaning it completely. He pulled me close, kissed my forehead. You're remarkable, you know that? I'm starting to believe it. We sat back down. Jonathan raised his glass. To new beginnings. To choosing ourselves, I added. Our glasses clinked, and I felt something settle deep in my chest. Not closure exactly, more like completion. The old story was finally over. The new one was just beginning. And this new story? It was going to be extraordinary. Because I was writing it myself on my own terms, with someone who understood that real love doesn't diminish, it amplifies. I'm sitting in my office right now as I tell you this story. It's a beautiful autumn morning, and sunlight streams through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Gordon and Company's headquarters. My drafting table sits by the window, the same one I abandoned 30 years ago, now reclaimed and central to everything I've built. 5 years have passed since that terrible anniversary night. 5 years since I opened that door and watched my old life shatter. 5 years since Edna Gordon, the devoted wife, died in a darkened hallway. And honestly, I've never been more alive. My company now has offices in 6 cities. We employ 43 people, mostly women, many of them over 40, all of them brilliant and underestimated by someone else before I found them. Last year, we generated $8 million in revenue. This year, we're on track for 12. But the numbers aren't what matter most. What matters is that I built this.
Me.
With my own vision, my own hands, my own relentless determination. Every morning, I wake up in the home I kept, the one I filled with my own art, my own furniture, my own energy. No more walking on eggshells. No more managing someone else's ego. No more shrinking myself to fit into spaces that were never meant for me. I drink my coffee in peace. I make decisions without asking permission. I spend my money how I choose. I travel when I want. I work because I love it, not because I have to. This is freedom. Real, tangible, hard-won freedom. Jonathan proposed to me 6 months ago. We were in Martha's Vineyard, at the beach house that's now entirely mine, watching the sunset. He got down on one knee in the sand, his silver hair catching the golden light. Edna Gordon, he said, I don't need you. I want you. There's a difference. I'm whole on my own, and so are you. But together? Together we're extraordinary. Will you marry me? I said yes. Not because I needed security. Not because I was afraid of being alone. But because I wanted to. Because he sees me. Because our love is built on mutual respect and admiration, not need and dependence. We're getting married next spring. I'm planning it myself, naturally. It's going to be small, intimate, filled with people who supported me through my darkest days and celebrated with me through my brightest ones. My children walk me down the aisle together. Michael and Sarah, who watched their mother rise from ashes and become someone they're proud to call a role model. I'm wearing emerald. Of course I am. It's my color of power now, reclaimed and redefined. People ask me sometimes, usually women who've heard my story, how did you do it? How did you rebuild after losing everything? And I tell them the truth. I didn't lose everything. I lost a man who never truly saw me. I lost a marriage built on my sacrifice and his comfort. I lost a life where I was invisible and undervalued. What I gained was myself. I tell them that betrayal, as devastating as it is, can be a gift. Not the betrayal itself. That's just cruelty. But the clarity it brings. The way it forces you to stop pretending, stop accommodating, stop accepting less than you deserve. That moment when I stood in that hallway, when my world fractured, that was also the moment I became free to build something new. Something better. Something mine. I think about Damson sometimes. Not with anger anymore. Not even with satisfaction at his downfall. Just with a kind of distant sadness for the life he could have had if he'd chosen differently. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he's remarried. Someone younger, naturally. I hope he treats her better than he treated me, though I doubt it. Leopards don't change their spots. They just find new territories. But that's not my concern anymore. His choices are his to make and his to live with. My choices are mine. And I choose joy. I choose ambition. I choose love that celebrates rather than diminishes. I choose myself every single day. I want to tell you something, especially if you're watching this and you see yourself in my story. If you're the woman who's given everything and received nothing in return. If you're the wife who's shrunk herself to make space for someone else. If you're the partner who's lost herself in someone else's dreams. You're not too old to start over. You're not too invested to walk away. You're not too afraid to choose yourself. I was 53 years old when my life fell apart. 53, with no career, no independent income, no identity outside of being someone's wife. And I rebuilt everything. I created something extraordinary from nothing but determination and belief in my own worth. If I can do it, you can too. It won't be easy. There will be nights when you cry yourself to sleep. There will be moments when you doubt yourself, when the fear feels overwhelming, when going back seems safer than moving forward. But I promise you this, on the other side of that fear is a life you can't even imagine yet. A life where you wake up excited about your day. A life where you're valued and respected. A life where you're not just surviving, you're thriving. You deserve that life. You've always deserved it.
My desk has a photograph on it now.
Not of Damson. Not of my wedding day 30 years ago. But of me, standing in front of Gordon and Company's headquarters on opening day. I'm wearing a navy suit. My head is high. My smile is genuine. My eyes are bright with purpose. That woman in the photograph, she's my hero. She's the woman who refused to stay broken. Who turned pain into power. Who chose herself when everyone expected her to choose differently. And every morning when I see that photograph, I remember, I didn't just survive betrayal. I transformed because of it. So here's my final message to you. Wherever you are, whatever you're going through, your life is yours to create. Not your husband's. Not your children's. Not your parents' or your friends' or society's expectations. Yours. And if the life you're living doesn't reflect the woman you are or the woman you want to become, change it. Rebuild it. Reclaim it. You're never too old. You're never too loyal. You're never too afraid. You just have to choose yourself. And then choose yourself again tomorrow. And the day after that. Until choosing yourself becomes as natural as breathing. That's what I did. That's what saved me. And that's what will save you too. I stand now and walk to my window, looking out at the city below. Somewhere down there are women just like I used to be, invisible, undervalued, devoted to people who don't deserve their devotion. I hope my story reaches them. I hope it shows them what's possible. Because 5 years ago, I was broken. Today, I'm whole. 5 years ago, I was someone's discarded wife. Today, I'm a successful entrepreneur, a respected businesswoman, and a woman in love with someone who sees my worth. 5 years ago, I thought my life was over. Today, I know it was just beginning. And if you're watching this video and you feel like your life is over, like the betrayal is too deep, the hurt is too great, the climb is too steep, I want you to know something. Your story isn't over either. It's just getting started. And the best chapters? Those are the ones you're about to write yourself. Did you like my story? And what city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. Give us a like if you enjoyed the story. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. By the way, don't forget to subscribe. It encourages me to keep bringing more stories like this. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.